Hello Divine Souls, and welcome to my channel, Journey of Soul Mastery. I am your host, Rebekah Cortez. If you're new to this channel, the emphasis is empowerment, empowering your states of existence, and the focus of this video is toxic ego mind, ending the self-sabotage game. So let's dive in. Self-sabotage is predominantly unconscious cycle because the patterns were developed as a result of past experiences that were trauma-inducing, that formulated the attachment to fear. We must be conditioned to operate in ego states. It is not a level of consciousness that we identify with initially. It is through negative imprinting and traumatic experiences that distorts our sense of belonging and survival, that we attach to our lower vibrational potential to be unauthentic. This is the contradiction and the conflict that we must transcend to return back to the wholeness of who we really are. We learn how to conform and comply with standards that are in opposition to our divine nature. A significant part of the healing process is to unlearn what we have been conditioned to believe in order to transcend the toxicity of ego. Signs of self-sabotaging behavioral patterns are self-criticality, judgmental, pessimistic, I can't mentality or defeatist mentality, procrastination, self-doubt and skepticism, competition and comparison mindset, unfocused, uninterested, or unmotivated altogether, confrontational, argumentative, defensive, or combative, people pleaser, self-sacrificing, self-medicating, addiction, unhealthy attachments, overthinker, perfectionist, frequently starts projects but rarely finishes them, or avoidance. Fears related to self-sabotaging behavioral patterns are fear of failure, fear of ruin, fear of rejection, and fear of success. Negative feelings that contribute to self-sabotaging behavioral patterns, and what most people experience when they've had any form of trauma in their lives, is guilt, shame, unworthiness, self-doubt, and mistrust, mainly in self, but in others as well. Everything is energy before it becomes any aspect of conscious reality, such as everything we do, everything we think, speak, wield through our choices, vibrates as a unique energetic frequency. When we're operating from ego and participating in lower vibrational potential of our creatorship ability, the matrix that our energetic focus is in service to are dark agendas, dark programming that perpetuate dark agendas, deep-seated in the falseness and illusions that are perpetuated only through the participation of our egos. We must awaken to the truths of the vibrational potential we promote through our choices. We have to ask ourselves, is the individual I am choosing to be every day in service to perpetuating darkness that karmically imprisons humanity in an ego matrix? Or is the person that I'm choosing to be in service to promote positively and contributing to the universal consciousness of love that sheds all conditions of falseness and promotes cosmic unity, peace, and authentic empowerment? Why do we commit such betrayal against self in the form of sabotage? We sabotage our own positive efforts because at some point along the way, toxic and traumatic experiences have distorted our position of stability and confidence. We conform and comply to falseness we are conditioned to follow to ensure our own survival. Negative ego programming infiltrates our existence at some point. And then the falsification of our self-image starts to shape. Due to the trauma, we attach to fear, and due to fear, all manner of self-doubt, disbelief in our positive potentiality, our position of self-image is distorted, and this diminishes our capacity to feel the magnitude of unconditional self-love, which places us more in disempowering states, which fuels conflict between our authentic truth and our adopted false core beliefs about self, which contributes to the sabotage cycle. Self-sabotage is like a huge construction wrecking ball that sweeps through our existence, demolishing every effort we have potentially set into positive motion. There are a lot of toxic activities we engage in when operating from lower vibrational ego states, and the sabotage game is a behavioral pattern that draws from the pool of disempowerment and induces internal positions conditioned through negative imprinting that stimulated traumatic experiences that negatively distorted our authenticity and unique expression of light. Self-sabotage literally destroys all positive and lighted potentiality from entering our field of existence to be experienced, and spawns the unwanted and undesirable into motion to be experienced in place of lighted and desired realities. Like most toxic ego games, sabotage starts internally and compromises the stability of our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual stability and harmonization to our highest universal potential. Self-sabotage is a manifested outcome preconditioned by fear. Doubt is the cause, and the ultimate effect is disempowerment that takes the form of self-betrayal and compromises our self-leadership confidence and alters our stability foundation of self-trust. The ego mind that is full of self-doubt, that spirals negative emotions, that stirs confusion and leads to disempowering thought processes that completely cause disruption to one's stability, trust, and confidence. It is a damaging action caused by lack of belief in self-worthiness due to compromised self-acceptance and interferes with all positive efforts through internal conflict. Self-sabotage is an internal action that stems from fear of inadequacy. This type of fear creates the mind to attach to beliefs of unworthiness because we were exposed to negative conditioning and actions that created the feeling of incompetence that lowered our perception of self and compromised the solid foundation of self-acceptance. At some point in our young years, we were negatively conditioned to perceive ourselves as lesser, smaller, unimportant, weaker, inadequate, or incapable of living up to the unreasonable expectations of others. And until we are able to strengthen our confidence of self-acceptance, these negative beliefs will plague our mind and create the need to sabotage our endeavors. Self-sabotage can either be subtle in nature, or it can be a force that rips through our potential states of reality, creating devastation left behind for us to rehabilitate. It is a tactic that we do not even have the capacity to see coming until we have accomplished destroying the chances of a positive outcome. Because most of the time, sabotage is an unconscious cycle. We can sabotage ourselves from so many different angles. No element of our existence is immune to the venom of sabotage. It is a cycle that is undetectable due to the nature of it being unconscious act until we consciously embrace the path of awareness and start consciously peeling back the layers of our past that requires healing from the trauma that we have sustained. The element of exposure to dark conditioning that causes traumatic experiences shapes our perceptions of self through the foundation of false core beliefs. And when we are not consciously aware of these false core beliefs that influence our internal states of imbalance or well-being, we are flying by the unconscious seat of our pants, so to speak. We must become conscious in our endeavor to identify the memories of disempowerment that introduced fear into our young and impressionable mind, that shaped the distorted nature of our self-image. Becoming aware and elevating our conscious perceptions isn't a luxury. It is a precondition in what determines our existence being empowering or disempowering. An important contributor in self-sabotaging cycles is negative emotions. Negative emotions fuel the perfect conditions for self-sabotage. Negative emotions influence negative thought processes and mindsets that stimulate direct and/or indirect action that will destroy confidence, trust, belief, and empowerment in our positive and highest potential. Fear is always the influencer in supercharged, disempowering emotional states. It doesn't take long after we feel negative emotions that the worrying mind kicks in, that feeds into all manner of negative thoughts, that spiral us down the rabbit hole of endless sabotaging feelings that stimulate lower vibrational internal positions that do not serve our light. The longer we dwindle in this toxic internal space, the more we weave threads of sabotage that destroy our highest potential externally in our existence. We are universal beings that are interconnected to every spectrum of sacred energy. This is the divine nature of universal connectivity and unfailing cosmic unity. And we as universal beings all feel very deeply because our emotions run deeply. We all have powerful emotions because we are celestial empaths at our core. Our feelings and emotions are our internal navigational system in the process of creatorship. Emotions are our greatest ally in creatorship, but if not managed wisely, our feelings can become a destructive force that fuels sabotaging patterns. being destructively conditioned, as many of us have been, especially men, not to embrace and comprehensively understand how to positively experience feeling our emotions is ridiculous and a sure way to ensure sabotage coming into play in our endeavors through life. We must learn how to work in harmony with our emotions and not look at emotions as though they're the problem. Our emotions are a guiding light pointing us to resolution when we remove the element of judgment and criticality and just simply allow ourselves the right to feel the way we do, and then take time to analyze why we feel the way we do. We must elevate our self-worth and self-love and extend permission to do what is utterly natural and requires no learning to accomplish if we are to be positive stewards of our feelings and emotions. We do not have to learn how to feel. We feel deeply about everything. But just like many other natural and sacred aspects of our universal construct, we have been deeply conditioned to not acknowledge our right to feel and perceive emotion as a required asset, guiding us towards our highest potential. For a very long time, it's been imprinted and programmed within ego that feeling too much or putting too much thought and attention into our emotions is a sign of being unstable, irresponsible, and foolish even. But for those, unfortunately, that didn't feed into that and did not close themselves off from their emotions and allowed themselves to explore the depths of their feelings, they were quickly assessed as weak and unstable according to a third-dimensional model of conduct. Our emotions assist us in the metamorphosis process of self-mastery because our emotions either stem from the platform of fear or love, and our feelings always assist us in identifying if we are being influenced by lower vibrational perspectives of ego or higher vibrational perspectives of soul. Ego will always seek the lower vibrational paths and feed into negative emotional states that promote negative feelings. Our universal self always seeks to uncover the deeper meaning and value within all experiences from an elevated perception of understanding. Ego always operates from perceptions that promote ignorance because ego perspectives are always void of spiritual intelligence. We must elevate our awareness to consciously identify the fears housed within our unconscious states because our experiences of the past reside in the unconscious structures which shape the storehouse for all the belief systems and influencers stored within our subconscious, and the subconscious contributes to our external behaviors, conducts, and actions. To stop cycles of self-sabotage, we must go into the depths of our past to uncover the reasons behind our attachment to the fears we harbor, so we can gain understanding and can end the falseness and elevate out of dark influences of conditioned and imprinted programming of our past and reclaim empowerment through acceptance of our authenticity and unique beingness. Self-acceptance is paramount to ending the majority of our pain and suffering stemming from our attachment to ego falseness. The intention behind these toxic ego mind series is to shine light of awareness and understanding to end self-sabotage and a lot of other patterns and cycles we perpetuate when ego is navigating us through our existence. So what is the difference between feelings and emotions? Well, the vital difference between feelings and emotions is that feelings are experienced on a conscious level, while emotions manifest both unconsciously and subconsciously. Our emotional states draw from the pool of experiences throughout our lives that have influenced our belief systems. Not all of our experiences have been necessarily positive, so when we consider the depths of our emotional states, we must understand that our traumatic and uplifting experiences both have a powerful effect on how we approach our emotional states and manage our feelings, not only towards ourselves, but towards others and the world. We always know how we feel. I know that people say that they don't know how they feel sometimes, but this is only because they don't want to be consciously or openly honest about how they feel. But regardless of the guilt or shame that they're experiencing as a result of how they feel, is the effect being manifested as a result of the cause, which is fear. It is accurate to state that we experience more difficulty understanding the depths of our emotional states more than we struggle with accepting how we feel. We must keep into perspective that we consciously control our feelings, and we can transform our feelings at any time with very little energy and effort. Feeling a particular way is a choice, and we control our choices. Our emotional states require a deeper resolve to transmute the spectrum of cause and effect. We must identify the deep-rooted cause, which is fear, that is triggering the stress that affects the spectrum of emotional reactivity that becomes reality. Our positive emotions can stimulate our highest creatorship potential, but our negative emotional states can spiral us into states that perpetuate all manner of lower vibrational disparity and mental turmoil that all primarily stem from our deepest fears. Negative karmic patterns such as depression, despair, mental instability, even physical ailments, anger, desperation, competition and scarcity mindsets, phobias, and so many more can spiral into effect as a result of unmanaged negative feelings that stem from negative emotional states we have due to traumatic experiences. The traumas we have lived in our past shape the fears we unconsciously attach to. The fears we harbor shape the stability or instability of our emotional states and our feeling centers. We must never disregard our feelings that stem from our emotions, and if we try to compartmentalize our feelings and allow our emotional states to brew and ferment, then time becomes the fuse that ignites an explosive external reaction, much like a volcano. I believe that a lot of people need to hear that it's natural and completely acceptable to feel and allow yourself to experience your emotions. In the journey of self-mastery, connecting to our emotional body is part of the metamorphosis of life. It is healthy to familiarize ourselves with the depths of our emotions and give ourselves permission to acknowledge consciously and securely our feelings and emotional states. Our emotions do not control us, and they do not define us. Emotions are the manifestation of our neglected or nurtured internal states of feelings. We have a great responsibility to our overall well-being to wisely manage our internal states. People often think that getting angry or feeling negative emotions will classify them as quote-unquote bad, which is a lower perception because we are neither good nor bad just because we feel. We are simply emotional creatures by nature, and to deny this truth about self is a recipe for suppression that leads to realities of disempowerment. We can only deny our feelings for so long before your emotional states become unbalanced, and then you'll open a floodgate for every feeling you have ever ignored to come rushing through like a water exploding out of a broken dam. The more we deny ourselves the right to be human, the more we deny ourselves the right to fully embrace the authentic nature of this journey called life, we will exist in disempowered states that over time will breed all manner of unwell and unhealthy conditions with detrimental symptoms mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. In the spectra of manifestation, I want to state very clearly that just experiencing negative emotions is not enough velocity to promote sabotaging patterns in the process of creatorship. That would just be unrealistic because we're emotional creatures. What turns the tides to the destructive side of velocity in our creatorship abilities is when we've placed prolonged, intentional, and excessive focused energy into negative feelings to the point that we start entertaining as truth the negative mindsets and thought processes that come drilling into our mindsets shortly after we find ourselves in negative emotional states. It's one thing to explore our emotional states for clarity and resolve, and it is entirely different to wallow in the negativity of it all and stay there for the sake of entertaining drama until we start believing the negative more than the positive and seek into deep states of disempowerment. This is the recipe for sabotage and is a very toxic cycle that we all must learn to transmute. It serves us in no way whatsoever to dwell on the negative to the point that we start to believe the negative thoughts and feelings are as ultimate truth. We are so much stronger and more capable than lowering ourselves to that level. But we are experiencing the vastness of human emotion. So we will have times that we must work harder at pulling ourselves up and out of the mud pit. But as long as we're trying, that's all that matters. How does trauma correlate with patterns of self-sabotage? In this section, we're going to be diving into trauma and the effects that it causes in our life. The science of psychology refers to long-term effects of trauma as PTSD, or rather post-traumatic stress disorder, and CPSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. The difference between the two is that PTSD is a long-term effect from a short-term experience or event that caused our mental and emotional stability and physical survival to be temporarily distorted in a way that negatively manipulated our coping abilities. CPTSD is stress triggered by trauma that is conditioned and imprinted over a prolonged period of time and from ongoing experiences and events that caused our mental, emotional, physical, and energetic stability and belonging and survival to be negatively distorted, and our self-image and core beliefs to be darkened and disconnected from our universal or authentic truth. Both PTSD and CPTSD are trauma influencers of stress that trigger long-term effects and induces unstable and unpredictable emotional reactivity, stress-inducing flashbacks, strained coping abilities, which negatively affect all manner of relating and relationships. And this deep-seated, ongoing stress held in our mental, emotional, and energetic bodies can cause serious physical ailments and long-term symptoms if we don't manage the stress caused from the trauma. Trauma is the aftermath of disempowering conditions we experience that stimulate the attachment to fear. Trauma can be traced back to every negative event and experience we have been exposed to, and trauma is linked to all manner of lower vibrational effects that negatively influence our core foundations. Trauma is what is caused as a result of something denying us the right to be authentic and express ourselves authentically. We all know what it feels like to be expected to do things that do not resonate strongly with us or bring us closer to our light. These unauthentic expressions dim our light and shape our egos that perpetuate the conflict between what is and what is not authentic. Trauma is mental, emotional, and physical and distorts our spirit and vitality, which negatively affects our very foundation of belonging and survival. And it distorts our core belief systems, and we start feeding into the ego, feeding into the false core belief systems that have been conditioned and imprinted. Traumatic experiences manipulate all authentic imagery of self and distorts our potential to see the positive ability within ourselves. Ego was shaped from fear and trauma and only seeks to live according to falseness and negative conditioning because survival is key, and ego only thinks that compromising authenticity is the only way to survive due to the trauma we all experience in our lives. Ego conceals all higher potential we have and have always had, but the shadows of ego must be lifted in order for us to see through the lies and illusions, to reclaim our balance and operate in harmony with universal truths. When prolonged trauma is experienced, an individual develops dysregulation of emotional states, meaning that their optimal potential to function is negatively altered. People that experienced ongoing abuse and neglect in their childhood will struggle to cope because of their distorted and dysfunctional perception of self. Their lack of ability to thrive in structured settings or environments will be easily triggered because their stress levels are immensely high, because they have a distorted sense of belonging. Their fear of rejection is enough to put them into a tailspin of emotional dysfunction or outburst. The strain of the stress and other side effects don't just leave our reality just because we are removed or have removed ourselves from the environment that produced the trauma. Although the initial stimulus promoting trauma is eliminated, the traumatic effects remain until we embrace the healing process and begin the process of deprogramming ourselves out of ego conditioning and returning back to the wholeness of our authenticity. We all must take time to address the negative emotions that trauma imprinted into our subconscious, or the trauma and negative conditioning will stimulate more conditioned patterns that is now self-inflicted trauma. This means dedicating time to take out the trash that has cluttered our subconscious with false beliefs as the foundation of our core belief, according to how we, and only we, define ourselves to be. We must transmute and restore truth according to how we, and only we, define it to be. Once we elevate the content in our subconscious storehouse to reflect our authentic truth, we can start to expand our level of consciousness and accept our higher senses and trust our sovereign senses that link us to all that is universal about our energetic essence. To return to wholeness after trauma, we must face our fears, allow ourselves to face and feel the emotions that had to be suppressed and compartmentalized for survival's sake. Feeling those emotions, and sometimes opening the floodgate for all those latent emotions to flood through, can be quite overwhelming. So I recommend processing through this a little bit at a time. It is important to our spiritual balance and overall well-being to face all the falseness that the trauma conditioned and the negative effects it has made in manipulating our self-image and perceptions towards others in the world. Trauma leaves deep wounds that require healing in order to return to the authentic expression of beingness each of us came here to embody before life got messy and painful. The more we try to convince ourselves that leaving was enough and that eliminating the presence of the person or persons responsible for our suffering was enough, we fool ourselves into following the conditioned mindset by perpetuating the patterns of negative influence. This is when we self-inflict the trauma by following the lower vibrational programming of ego and all the falseness ego represents. Basically, we will still operate under the programming and influence of their self-serving agendas if we do not intentionally and consciously embrace the metamorphosis journey. We must dedicate time to the transmutation process that looks into the shadows and removes the clouds that fog the ability to see our fullest and highest potential and divinity of perfection we all are as universal beings. To transcend all the conditioned and imprinted unwanted falseness that distorted our reflection of self, we must cut the cords of control, which are the influences of trauma that perpetuate false beliefs and negatively manipulate our perspectives of self and perceptions of others and the world. If we do not heal by doing the shadow work and face the darkness to transmute it into light and authentic power, we will be forever dominated by the impacts of trauma. Transform painful experiences to growth points so they don't turn into roadblocks. In this section, we're going to be going over how to awaken the heart after experiencing trauma. You must believe that you are more worthy of love and let go of the falseness, that it is your fate to just suffer in this life. Commit to the metamorphosis path of healing. You must accept, acknowledge, embrace, and embody the realization that there are aspects unconsciously and subconsciously and consciously, that require transformation, transmutation, and transcendence. You must believe that all the conditioned beliefs and imprinted patterns that trigger negative sensitivity is what is false due to a conditioned distortion of your perception of self. You have been conditioned to believe that the opinions and judgments of others is what your acceptance and belonging foundation is built from, and this too is very false. Allow yourself the right to unlearn the unwanted falseness and return to the wanted and pure states of your sovereignty. Live your own life according to what your heart states is authentic truth for you. Learn to embrace the comfort on the other side of what letting go offers. Return to authentic expression. Return to wholeness. You must allow yourself to break free of the manipulation, the control, and the dark patterns of conformity and compliance. You must be willing to let go of identifying yourself as a victim, to reclaim your empowered authenticity of self-expression. You must open your heart to self-love and learn how to let go of conditional expectations and transmute all conditioned and imprinted falseness into confident, unconditional self-love and self-acceptance. You are not a prisoner destined to follow the same programming of ego, conditioned beliefs, imprinted conformity and compliance. You are the creator of your own existence. You must transcend all manner of lower vibrational programming that casts shadows of falseness that fog your insight, cloud your perceptions, and destabilizes your emotional and mental states. You must have a committed desire to identify and believe the lighted and positive potentiality within yourself. You must detach and disassociate with the dark programming that conditioned falseness that caused your perception of self to entertain the falseness that you are unworthy, unwanted, unlovable, incapable, and disempowered. Shed the falseness. You must believe that your capacity to feel positive emotions is just as possible as your capacity to feel negative emotions. Know that you are the only deciding factor between what emotional states you allow into your reality to be experienced. Don't fall subject to the whimsies of external conditions as if you do not have a deciding factor in what you are and who you are in this world. You cannot allow anger and resentment to cause mental bitterness to the point that you blame the whole world for the transgressions of one or a few. You must be willing to let go of hate, mistrust, anger, resentment, jealousy, envy, and all manner of lower vibrational feelings, and open your heart to experience unconditional love. We all have the capacity to love wisely by setting healthy boundaries and listen and act on our higher guidance and trust our sacred intuitive self and our higher senses. If negative experiences of pain and suffering is all you think the world is capable of showing you, and you believe the falseness that you are somehow just fated to experience pain in this life, then what you focus on and place energetic velocity behind by believing it
is exactly what manifests your experiences in your spectrum of reality. You must follow the truth of your heart to the universal knowingness that it is you that decides when the healing begins within you and when the pain and suffering ends. By elevating your perspectives and elevating the level of love you allow yourself to feel for yourself and the world. Love is and always has been the key to all healing, because we must believe we are worthy of love, to feel love and accept love into our lives to be experienced. We must have a desire to open our heart and not allow our trauma to jade our purity and light. The most significant battle we win is not holding on to the pain and keeping ourselves imprisoned to the victim mentality. We win the hardest battle when we rise to allow ourselves to detach from the falseness that caused us the trauma and allow ourselves the right to lead ourselves in positive and empowering ways back to the authenticity and wholeness we already are and always was from inception into this world before everything got messy. To connect to this truth means that we must let go of the disbelief of the falseness. We must look at ourselves in the mirror and see a desirable aspect of unconditional acceptance and love. We must allow ourselves the right to explore our negative feelings surrounding all traumatic experiences we have been subjected to, and see that we are more and that there is more to life than just the pain and the dysfunctional aftermath of what the traumatic experiences caused. We must allow ourselves the right to become the leaders that we never had, because it just wasn't there for some of us when we were younger. But we have to know that we have always been deserving of it, of beauty, of light, of positive leadership. You must look upon the traumatic events and all the pain and suffering from your past as a model that taught you what to not do and what not to be to others in this world. The worst teachers in this world still teach us what not to do, which still holds value. Soften your perspective to elevate your consciousness to resonate in harmony with the song of your soul, which only knows and embodies love. We have all learned the difficult lesson of the truth that we are the duality of both dark and light within our internal potentiality. For us that have suffered pain and trauma at the hand of those that only allowed themselves to embody the dark potential within themselves, we must acknowledge that we too have the same darkness within us. We just don't choose that path as the dominating element in our existence. As much as some of us cannot even entertain the very idea of inflicting pain onto another consciously and intentionally, we must face the truth that we are capable of it, which is why it is so important to exercise accountability and make choices that are spiritually responsible. We must also stop inflicting unnecessary pain and suffering on ourselves by allowing the trauma of our past to define our existence. We must love ourselves enough to say, I am worthy of more. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of experiencing all the lighted potentiality this life has to offer. And I will not sabotage my right to experience it anymore.